thank for the beautiful weather. Thank the Lord for all the blessings of life that we forget about our daily life, make us more comfortable. The fact that we need to be ready for you. So thank you for all the people who came out today. And thank for good services. We pray for it. Those that we have to eat from Daddy to give us their sin and feel comfort. We thank you that.
Thank you. Talking about beautiful things. God gave us a beautiful thing last night called rain. Any birthdays in the basket? Any birthdays? Any anniversaries? How many got that? 7? Many more. John chapter 10. We'll read one verse together this morning, verse 30. John 10, verse 30. A young business owner was opening a new branch office, and a friend decided to send a floral arrangement for the grand opening. When the friend arrived at the opening, he was appalled to find that his leaf bore the inscription, "Rest in peace." Angry, he complained to the florist, and after the florist apologized, he said, "Well, look at it this way. Some man buried under a roof today that says, 'Good luck in your new location.'" John chapter 10, let's read verse 30 together. I am my Father, Lord one. And to open this morning on the power of one. One God, one Christ, one Holy Spirit, one individual, one lost soul, one vision, one prayer, and one encouragement. Many people say, "I'm only one person. What can I possibly do?" Think about it this way. You, one person, can pray. Then you can use one finger to dial a phone. Then you can use your one tongue to encourage that one who is going through a bad time. Each one of us is one person. We're part of one church. And it's one goal to lead person to that, to lead people one by one to Christ. National Baptist Church is one unit. If we want to call that place one unit, it consists of you, me, our pastors, our Sunday school teachers, our nursery workers. What would happen to our church if one by one we left off our positions or stopped our work? Think about this. I know the power of one tongue can build up our church, or it can tear down our church and destroy it. And James chapter 3 and verse 8 it says, "But the tongue can no man tame. It is unruly evil, full of evil." Usually we think about a lost person, bad mouthing to tear down the church. But it can also be a Christian. We really have no control over our tongue, other than what God helps us to have. let's pray and say in prayer that God will help control everything. The church needs to go on. Because one by one, when lost people come in, the goal is to see them saved, not to see them leave unsaved. Let's stand in prayer, Lord.
Father, in thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us our daily bread. Forgive us our debts, we forgive our debtors. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, the glory forever. Amen.
See if Miss Aaron or Miss Beth is still in.
Yeah, got one.
All right, I think y'all know where to turn to. Unless you're new, you go to Genesis chapter, well, I guess I better look. They start to blend together after a little while. I think it's 25. Kind of going around 25, 26. I got to get to the spot where I'm at there. Yeah, 20, you can go ahead at the end of 25, beginning of 26. So that's where we're going to be. This thing, I don't want to be too loud. Everyone had a good week. All right. Anyone have any praises or answered prayers or anything you would like to say? Give you a quick opportunity to do that. No, I will. My cousin, married cousin, had been struggling with some kidney problems. He needed a kidney transplant. He's about 50 years old, and but he needed it for, I guess they only considered him having kidney problems for about a year, and he's only been on the list for maybe 6-8 weeks or so. But they had someone in the community pass, and they wanted to try to see if their kid in the family if the kidney would match my cousin, and it did. And so the Lord came through, and a lot of people are on those lists for years and years and years, and he was on it for, I don't know exactly how long, but thankfully he got a call last Saturday night, was in Monday morning surgery, and he's already home doing well. So praise the Lord for that. He's got kids in college and trying to hold a full-time job and all kinds of stuff. So a lot of answered prayers there for him. And so there's one for me. Anybody got anything you'd like to say? It's okay if not. I probably wouldn't speak up either if I was saying I only do it because I'm up here. So anyway, into Genesis, let's talk about one of the things we believe. We talked last week about how when we die, we either go in one place or the other. Okay. So we're going to start with the one that hopefully everyone in this room is in, and if not, hopefully you get that taken care of. But I'll just read to you. It says, we believe that the souls of the redeemed, this is the saved individuals, are at death, absent from the body and present with the Lord. We see that in 2 Corinthians 5:8. That's just that's a section of 5:8. That's not the whole verse, but that's what Paul's talking about there at the church at Corinth, is the fact that that's something we can have confidence in, is the fact that when we are not within our earthly bodies, we are present with the Lord instantly. There's nothing in the middle. There's a lot of denominations. There's not a lot. There's a few denominations and churches that teach something about sleeping. There are mentions in the Bible about sleeping, but it's not this kind of sleep. There are people that believe that when you die, you're just unconscious and nothing happens and you're just waiting. We know biblically, and if I had more time, we could dig into those scriptures on that. We will a little bit. I have some up here if you're interested in that. You can write some of these down. Also, the Catholic Church teaches purgatory, which is not biblical either. This is kind of a holding room that you go into, and while your sins are being, I guess, forgiven, the ones that I guess Jesus couldn't pay for, which it doesn't make sense to me. I'm not even going to try to explain it because it's not biblical. But we know that when we die, we are either going to be in the presence of the Lord or we're going to be in the presence of nothing, hell, absence of the Lord, separation from the Lord. Luke 22:3 says, this was when Jesus was talking to one of the thieves on the cross. He said, today, talked about this on Easter, today shalt thou be with me in paradise. It doesn't say after you sit in purgatory for a few months, you will be with me in paradise. Now that word today is very important. So that tells you right there. Then it talks, the second part says, where in conscious bliss they await the first resurrection. So our soul, spirit go up, our physical body is still here in the earth, or in the ground. And it says when spirit, soul, and body are reunited to be glorified. That's after the first resurrection. Be glorified forever with the Lord. And you can see some verses here. I'll put the first one up. 1 Thessalonians 4:16 and 17. And this talks about the rapture. It says, the Lord himself shall descend from heaven with a shout, and the voice of the archangel, and with the trump of God, and the dead in Christ shall rise first. Then we which are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. So shall we ever be with the Lord. So that's a very confident reassurance there. You hear that a lot at funerals and people going through tough situations, knowing that we're going to be with the Lord, and but the dead in Christ shall rise first, people that have died in Him before us. And so there's more verses there in Philippians. That's a good one there. Is Paul's talking about how he's struggling. It says, for I am in a strait betwixt two, having a desire to depart and to be with Christ, which is far better. So here he's talking to the church about he wants to stay, and he knows he has a job to do, but he also wants to be with the Lord. And so we know that by what Paul's saying here, and Paul was taught by Jesus Christ himself, if Paul's worried about where he's going to go, and if he has to go and sleep and be unconscious, he wouldn't really be that excited. He probably wants to stick around and do more work for the Lord. But he knows, though, that when he's gone, he's going to be with the Lord, which is far better, as he says here. So we'll talk about the other side of the coin next week, and that would be people who are not redeemed, those who are not saved, and what happened to them, their eternal state. So again, there's some more verses there if you want to jot those down. Revelation 20 talks about us in our glorified bodies. All right, already did that. All right, let's a question I wanted to kind of bring up today. I know you've probably heard this before, and I use this all the time in my civics class when we're talking about how things are done, and a lot of people like to say, well, I had good intentions. Good intentions is what makes it okay. And that's kind of one of those phrases that you hear a lot of times. Do the ends always justify the means? So it means that it doesn't matter how you do it, as long as you're doing it for the right reason. Okay, that's kind of what the question is. Is that correct? Is that a correct statement, you all think? I see a lot of head nods this way. I guess that's a nod. Head turns. I would hope that would be the case. In certain situations, it may seem like, well, it's okay. You think about people being in situations where they're starving to death and they don't have anything, and so is it okay to go and steal from someone? You say, well, I got to feed my family. I'm going to leave that one up to you. There's things people may say, well, you got to do what you got to do. I had a kid tell me this in a Little League baseball game. He said, if you're not cheating, you're not trying. I know y'all have heard that before. I coach high school basketball, and I know a lot of high school basketball coaches prescribe to that theory right there. But that's what that means, basically. It's the same thing. If you're not doing anything you can beyond everything you possibly can, whether you're following the rules or not, it's okay as long as you're trying to win. I don't think that's the way. You've heard the phrase, nice guys finish last, too. And here we talk about people that are righteous. That means they finish last. So we're going to talk about a situation where God had a plan for Jacob. And Jacob and his mother decided to go to do whatever they could in order for that plan to be fulfilled, whether or not it was okay or not. And so I'm going to ask you a couple questions, and then we're going to come back to these at the end. I think I kind of set it up in a way that kind of leads you to think in one direction. I hope you're already thinking one direction. Do you think, so listen to these, there's 5 of these, okay? Is it okay? All right, so in your head, all right, you don't have to answer. Is it okay to lie to get someone to go to church? Oh, think about that. Is it okay to steal as long as you're giving it in the offering plate? All right, is it okay to exaggerate your testimony to get people saved? Is it okay to swindle someone? Let's say we need a new church piano, and I go find one, some old lady's got one, and I lie to her and tell her it's a piece of junk, it's not worth anything, and she gives it to me. And I know it's a good one. For the church, we need it. And is it okay to sin with unbelievers as a way to win them to Christ? All right, so go hang out with people and do what they do, and then try to witness to them. All right, so think about those sorts of things as we come. I'm not going to sit here and give you answers to each individual one. It's just something for us to think about. And I hope as we get through the lesson, you'll have a pretty good principle in your heart as to knowing whether those statements are right or wrong. So let's get into this first. Jody, would you mind doing me a favor? Would you mind to read that for me, please? This is our memory verse. Go ahead. This is Hosea 14:9.
Who is wise, and he shall understand these things. Prudent, and he shall know them. For the ways of the Lord are right, and the just shall walk in them, and the transgressors shall fall therein.
All right. Thank you very much. So this is a memory verse that talks about the ways of the Lord are right. Whether we really understand them or not, whether or not we choose to follow them, whether or not they go the way we want them to go, they're right. It's the way to go. And you can see what the consequences would be of those who follow them and those who don't. So thank you, Jody. But let's do a little reminder of what we talked about. We talked about that line. Look at that blue line there. That's the line of Jesus Christ. We got into last week just real quick about the birth of. Before we get into the birth, we saw where Isaac finds his spouse. Okay, the Lord leads the servant of Abraham to Rebekah, and we talked about how that went down, and how Isaac and Rebekah married. They eventually they couldn't have children at first. Isaac prayed, and the Lord blesses Rebekah and Isaac with twins. Who are those 2 twins? Jacob and Esau. Okay, we always say it like that. We never say Esau and Jacob, even though that's how they were born. Esau and Jacob. We always say, everybody seems to say Jacob and Esau. Because that's how the Lord, that was the Lord's plan. We see the two different. All right, Esau was born first. He was a redhead, very hairy person. He was an outdoorsman. He was a hunter. He didn't really seem to care about the things that he should have cared about. He sold his birthright for a meal. That's talking about giving up something very important in his eyes, or wasn't at the time. But it was something that should have been important to him, and he gave it up for something minuscule. And he was the favorite of his father Isaac. Then we see Jacob. All right, he's the second born. He was the heel holder or supplanter. Some people say his name means deceiver. There's all kinds of other things that his name could potentially mean, but he was the one who stayed near the home. He didn't go out like his brother. He stayed within the tents, and he cleverly purchased the birthright from Esau. We know he was the favorite of his mother, Rebekah, and this was God's plan, was through Jacob. Now, we didn't necessarily know. God didn't say how this plan was going to be fulfilled, but we talked about that line of who that promised seed was going to be, and eventually for Jesus Christ. But it's going to be through Jacob. It's not going to be through the firstborn, who it normally would have been through Esau. So we get into chapter number 26, and we come into a situation. So go to Genesis chapter number 26. We're going to, Lord willing, get through 26 and 27 today. And we'll be caught up to lesson number 11. So let's go to 26. We're not going to spend a lot of time here. I want to spend most of our time in 27, but I don't want to skip over it completely because there's a lot of good truths here. I'm going to read one little section here of chapter 26. We'll read a few verses just so we kind of get an understanding of what's going on. So Jacob and Esau are born. Okay, they're older now. And Chapter 26, verse 1 says, "And there was a famine in the land, beside the first famine that was in the days of Abraham. And Isaac went into Abimelech, king of the Philistines, at Gerar. And the Lord appeared unto him and said, Go not down into Egypt, dwell in the land which I shall tell thee. Sojourn in this land, and I will be with thee, and I will bless thee. For unto thee and unto thy seed I will give all these countries, and I will perform the oath which I swear unto Abraham thy father." All right, so we see God's covenant here with Isaac. He's going to continue that. We saw it with Abraham, and we're going to see it through Jacob as well. But we've got a famine in the land. We say, he tells him not to go to Egypt. Who went to Egypt during the famine? Anybody remember? Joseph did. All right. In the future, who went in the past prior to this? Abraham did. Okay, remember what Abraham did? He goes down to Egypt. He lies about his wife. Oh, let's read ahead here. Isaac does the exact same thing. Okay, as he goes in, he does the exact same thing. He tells him that his wife, Rebekah, is his sister, just like his father did. Now, was it Abraham's fault? No, but I'm sure Isaac had a lot of the same tendencies his father did. So a lot of the same sinful tendencies, just like we all do. We're all human. Same thing. And it says, "And Isaac dwelt in Gerar, and the men of the place," this is verse 7, "asked him of his wife, and he said, She is my sister. For he feared to say," look at that phrase right there, "For he feared to say," look at what the Lord had just told him. All the things that he was going to bless him with, and how, he was going to be okay, and he was fearful. He said, he is feared to say, "She is my wife," lest he said, "The men of the place shall kill me for Rebekah, because she was fair to look upon." Same situation as we saw Abraham. And in a similar situation, he's found out. Apparently Abimelech, which I think, from what I could read, because this is the third time we've went through the name Abimelech, more than likely this was some sort of title for like a Philistine leader. Probably wasn't the same person, because you saw Abraham deal with him, and now Isaac deal with him. It could have been the same person, but more than likely it wasn't. But he sees Isaac and Rebekah in some sort of embrace, to the point where he knew that's not his sister. That's definitely his wife there. And basically, he runs him out of town, gets him out of town. And as we come through here, we see Isaac continuing to prosper. We don't see necessarily the Lord punish Isaac in any sort of fashion in this particular chapter, other than the fact that he's made to move on. But he runs into some problems over wells, over them trying to dig wells in here. And we're not going to get into that a lot. But what we see is Isaac continues to prosper. Even though he's moving, he's in a land that's not really, it's a little bit south of where he's been from, he continues to prosper. And it's noticeable. It's noticeable amongst the people. It's noticeable that the fact that, and let me see if I can find the particular verse here. Verse 12, it says, "And Isaac sowed in that land, and received the same year 100-fold, and the Lord blessed him. And the man waxed great, and went forward and grew until he became very great. He had possession of flocks, and possession of herds, and great store of servants, and the Philistines envied him." So they saw him from a distance, and they could tell that the Lord was with him. They knew that something was special about him. And reading this, it kind of makes me think about my own life. Okay, does someone look at what I have, or somebody look at me from the outside and say, not in a prideful way of like physical things or like worldly things. I'm talking about, do people see the Lord in me? Okay, when I'm walking, when I'm teaching, when I'm out on the street, when I'm out weed eating, or whatever it may be, okay, is that present? And that's something we all need to think about. And I kind of think to myself, you know what? I don't even know if people know I'm a Christian. And that's kind of a sad thing. Do people know? But they could see here that the Lord was with Isaac. And maybe it was because of his possessions that he had, or maybe it was something special about him. Maybe everybody else was struggling and he was getting by just fine. But they could see that the Lord was with him. And he gets into some disputes, and eventually they find a well, and Abimelech comes running back. They run him out of town. And we see in verses 26 through 32 that Abimelech says, we'll start in 27, "And Isaac said unto him, Wherefore come ye to me, seeing that you hate me, and you've sent me away?" That's what Isaac's wanting to know. You got rid of me. Why are you coming back? And verse 28 says, "And they said, We saw certainly that the Lord was with thee. And we said, Let there be now an oath betwixt us, even betwixt us and thee, and let us make a covenant with thee." And we saw Abraham make a covenant multiple times with Abimelech, and here we see it again. And they had a feast, and Isaac never had any issues, at least in this particular time, with this. But they saw that the Lord was with him. And that's something just to consider within your mind about your own personal walk with the Lord and your own witness to others. Whether or not you're verbally witnessing to others, but is your physical actions witnessing to others. So we get into that little section there. It's just kind of a little side part here of this, but we get back into Esau and Jacob. And this is where we're kind of transitioning. We heard a lot about Abraham. We're going to get a little bit about Isaac, and then we're going to get a lot about Jacob. And pretty much the remainder of this book deals with Jacob and his children. We know that those children eventually become the 12 tribes of Israel, and he becomes Israel. But for this point, we're still dealing with Esau a little bit. So let me get to where we need to be. And I kind of came up with a little bit of a different way to do this. I guess I got a little happy with my lettering here. We're going to go, everything starts with a P today. So I tried my best here. So we got a little alliterative outline, which basically means it all starts with the same thing. So we're going to go through this. Genesis 27 is a story. I can remember as a kid reading this story in the little storybooks and about this. But there's a lot we can unpack here. And we need to remember, we always go back to that question we talked about at the beginning about the ends justifying the means. But we know from back in Genesis, I believe it was Genesis 25, it talked about, let me see if I can find, it's in verse 23 of chapter 25. It said, this was before Esau and Jacob were born. It said, the Lord said unto her, talking to Rebekah, 2 nations are in thy womb. 2 manner of people shall be separated from thy bowels. And the one people shall be stronger than the other people, and the elder shall serve the younger. So we see here what the Lord intended to happen between the two. We see that Jacob was going to be the one that Esau would serve. But that's not necessarily what Isaac wanted. It may have been what Rebekah wanted for selfish reasons, because she liked Jacob better. But we see this plan unfold here. So let's get started with, let's start with the first one. And that's the pain here. And what was the pain? Well, the pain was the fact that Esau did something that was not pleasing to his family. We see in verse number 34 of chapter 26. We're going to finish with 26 and go right into 27. It says, and Esau was 40 years old when he took to wife Judith, the daughter of Beeri the Hittite, and Bashemath, the daughter of Elon the Hittite. So right on top, right there, he knows that he shouldn't be marrying women from there in Canaan, and he doesn't. And we see in verse 35, which were a grief of mine unto Isaac and to Rebekah. So we see the pain there with his parents. And even though Isaac still favored Esau, he did something that brought grief to them. He did something that the Lord spoke against, and the Lord will continue to speak against that throughout the Old Testament about the people, the children of Israel, intermarrying with unbelievers, with idol worshipers, with people living there that they should have destroyed or run out of town, but they decided to mix with them. And it wasn't that they brought them in, they witnessed to them, and they became believers. It was that they eventually then started doing the same habits that they did, and that's why the Lord was against it. So we see the pain here. We see the preparation as well. As we're going to read through the first few verses to kind of get a context of what how this is going to go. And it says, and it came to pass when Isaac was old, and his eyes were dim, so that he could not see, he called Esau his eldest son, and said unto him, my son. And he said unto him, behold, here I am. And remember, Esau had already sold his birthright. Okay? He had already got rid of it for a meal. And he said, behold, now I am old, and I know not the day of my death. Now therefore, take, I pray thee, thy weapons, thy quiver, and thy bow, and go out in the field, and take me some venison, and make me savory meat, such as I love, and bring it to me, that I may eat, and that my soul may bless thee before I die. So here's what he wants. He wants to bless Esau. He knows, Isaac knows who was the intended seed here. Who was the one that God intended to bless and continue on his promise through. Isaac has a little bit of a different theory here. He doesn't come out saying he's trying to override what the Lord's trying to do, but he wants to bless Isaac. He thinks he's going to die soon, and Rebekah overhears it. All right, so we go to the next part. So that's the preparation for it. Now we see the plot getting ready to happen here. This is Rebekah. It says, Rebekah heard when Isaac spake to Esau his son, and Esau went to the field to hunt for venison and to bring it. So she knows what's getting ready to happen here, and so she comes up with a little bit of a plan here. So here's what the deal is. We're not going to read the entire thing. We're going to hit some parts to it, but we know what Rebekah's planning to do. She's going to try to deceive her husband, Isaac, here in this particular situation. She's going to try to take advantage of the fact that he's blind and he cannot see who his children are. So she says, basically, I'll make you a meal, Jacob. You go take the meal in, and then you receive the blessing. Okay? Remember what they're thinking here. This is not a good chapter for any of the people involved in here. Nowhere at this point do any of them go to the Lord. I don't even believe other than Jacob lying about God, I don't think they even mentioned God in this whole thing as far as anything positive, at least in the first part. And I may be wrong, but right off the top here, they don't ever go to God here and ask, is this what we should do? I know I'm the intended seed. Don't you think, let's go back to some alternative history here. Let's imagine. I always like to do this in my class. What if the South would have won the Civil War? We always like to do stuff like that. What if Isaac would have blessed Esau? Do you think Jacob would have continued to be the promised seed?
Yes.
Yes, I agree with that statement. Okay, I think if the Lord wanted Jacob to be the promised seed, it would have happened. Okay, now the Lord may have used this particular situation in order to accomplish that, but I believe it would have happened anyway. So they're counting on like something. Isaac has some sort of magical powers to give this blessing. Yeah, it was probably an honor to get a blessing from your father, but the only blessings that mean anything are from the Lord Himself. And so we see this. They were going to prepare a meal. They were going to disguise Jacob as Esau. Remember, he's a hairy individual. They're going to go kill a lamb, or I think it says a goat, if I can find it. Yeah, they're going to go kill a goat. And they're going to place him on Jacob's arms. And they're going to really try to deceive Isaac here. So they're working up a plan here. Jacob's a little bit unsure at first. Look at what he says. It says, my father peradventure, so perhaps my father will feel me, and I shall seem as him a deceiver. I shall bring a curse upon me and not a blessing. He's not worried about God finding out. He's worried about his dad finding out. He doesn't want to be cursed. And she says, and his mother said unto him, upon me be thy curse, my son. Only obey my voice and go fetch me then. So she's willing to do this. She's willing to deceive the Lord. She's willing to deceive Isaac here to get what she wanted. Because remember, she loved Jacob the most. And while Jacob was the plan, God's plan, they're trying to go about it here in a way that is deceitful. So let's look at verse number 20. So he goes in, he puts the skin on his hands and on his it says the smooth of his neck, and she gave him the meat and the bread, and he goes in unto Isaac. And verse 18 says, and he came to his father and said, my father, he said, here I am. Who art thou, my son? I think Isaac was a little unsure at first. And Jacob said to his father, I am Esau, thy firstborn. There's a lie. I have done according to thou badest me. There's another lie. Arise, I pray thee, and sit, eat my venison, that thy soul may bless me. So remember, he didn't really trick his brother, but he took advantage of his brother early to get his birthright. Now he's trying to trick his own dad here, trying to deceive him. In verse 20 says, and Isaac said unto his son, how is it that thou hast found it so quickly, my son? I don't know how long it took for him to go get that meal together, but there's no McDonald's out there to go pick it up quickly. There's no 20 minutes or your order's free kind of thing on here. It was going to take a little bit of time. And here's what Jacob does. And he said, because the Lord, thy God, brought it to me. So he's going to lie. He's not even going to go to God, but he's going to lie about something God did. And Isaac said unto Jacob, come near, I pray thee, that I may feel thee, my son, whether or not thou be my very son Esau or not. And Jacob went near unto Isaac his father, and he felt him and said, the voice is Jacob's voice, but the hands are the hands of Esau. So while he wasn't 100% sure that was really Esau, he continued with it, and he blessed Jacob when he thought was Esau. So now this situation happens. Let me get myself caught up where I'm at in my notes here. I tend to run along ahead. So he does convince his father, and he gets the blessing from his father. So now this is the perplexity. This is a tough word to come up with a thing for, but this is confusion. So he comes in, Esau comes in, and he's very, very confused. And so is Isaac, because he said, hey, Dad, I got your meal. I'm ready for my blessing now. Who are you? I've already done that. And now Esau is getting confused and starting to get mad. And Isaac, in verse number 32, it says, and Isaac his father said unto him, who art thou? And he said, I'm thy son, thy firstborn Esau. And Isaac trembled very exceedingly and said, who? Where is he that hath taken venison and brought it to me? And I have eaten it of all before thou camest, and blessed him. And yea, he shall be blessed. Esau knew what happened, and Isaac was just, I don't know if he was fearful of what he did or fearful of the Lord, that he was trying to usurp the authority of what the Lord wanted him to do, but he was shaking tremendously, very, very tore up over this whole situation. So now Esau is begging. We see the next point is the plea. He starts to beg for his blessing. Verse 34 says, bless me, even me also, my father. And he said, I already I've already blessed your other brother. So he can't do it. We see the prophecy happen here as well. And because Esau wanted the blessing, Isaac knew what the Lord had already said. And I think that may be one reason why why Isaac was trembling like he was. In verse number 39, and Isaac his father answered and said unto him, Behold, thy dwelling shall be the fatness of the earth, or of the dew, the heaven from above. And thy sword shalt thou live, and shalt serve thy brother. Remember where it said that back in a previous chapter? And it shall come to pass, when thou shalt have dominion, that thou shalt break his yoke from off thy neck. So we're going to see this constant division between these two brothers, but ultimately it's going to be the older serving the younger, just as the Lord intended. And that's exactly what Isaac told him. He should have told him that from the beginning. That should have been the very first thing he said. This is what the Lord intended. I'm sorry. I like you better, but the Lord likes Jacob better. You know, that has his plan for Jacob. And so that was the prophecy here. And now the anger comes about. And so the prejudice here in verse number 41, as we finish up this chapter, it says that Esau hated Jacob because of the blessings wherewith his father blessed him. And Esau said in his heart, The days of mourning for my father at hand, and I will slay my brother Jacob. So we see a situation much like Cain and Abel, where one brother is envious of another and attempts to slay the other. Now, we're going to continue ahead. I'm going to tell you the plot, the ending right off. I'm sorry, but he doesn't do it. Okay, he doesn't come through with it in this particular situation because of the fact that Sarah. I'm going back a little bit in time. Let's go Rebecca. Rebecca hears about it, knows that Esau is mad at Jacob, and basically tells him to run. And we're going to cover these last two parts next week, the parting and the perception. But we see Esau try to make up to his father and try to please his mother and father by marrying someone within the family, by marrying an Ishmaelite, which was not what was going to please. It was not going to please the Lord, and that wasn't going to make things any better. But we see this family situation, and we see the consequences of it too, as now the family's split. You got Jacob on the run. Jacob's going to be heading back to his some more of his family's, his mother's, father's land, and now he's on the run away from his family. And we're going to get into the fact that he starts looking for a spouse, and he has a dream where he speaks with the Lord in this particular, our next story in chapter number 28. But a couple things to consider through all this as we finish up these last few minutes is Isaac, Rebekah, Jacob, and Esau. This is not a good chapter for them as far as their walk, their righteousness here. We see a lot of this was about them, that they intended, what they planned, what they wanted, who they loved, not what the Lord intended here. They didn't even trust each other. They didn't trust the Lord, but they were lying and deceiving each other to get what they wanted. And obviously this whole story reflects no credit upon any of these people at all. I think part of the worst part of the fact is they weren't trusting in the Lord because they were trusting so much in Isaac's ability to have a blessing upon someone here. And then you see Jacob. Jacob really just wanted to do what was going to work. Remember, he at first is like, I might be deceitful, I might be cursed. He didn't want to get in trouble. Hey, that's one thing I deal with my kids all the time. Are you crying and upset because you're in trouble, or are you crying and upset because you really are sorry for what you did? And a lot of times it's because I'm in trouble. And that's what he was. He didn't want to get in trouble with Isaac, and he didn't want to get in trouble with God, only in the fact that he didn't want a curse. Not that he was trying to do anything. He just didn't want to get caught. So everything he was doing, he was justifying it because I think he believed he was the one. He was that righteous one. So it didn't matter what he did. As long as he was trying to do that, it was okay. He was trying to justify. He was trying to come up with excuses for this particular sin that he accomplished. So when we think about it, as we finish up this lesson, I want you to think about those questions that we talked about earlier. Is it okay to lie to get someone to go to church? Anybody got an answer? No. But what if they get saved? I'm playing devil's advocate now. We know that that's not, and that's tough for some people to really grasp. But the Lord has plans. If that person is going to come to church, okay, they're going to come to church in the right way. Okay, we don't have to lie to them about it. We don't have to say, "Hey, my church is so great; they give out $100 bills to every new person that comes in." Think about what that's going to do to someone when they come in and realize that money is going in there and not going back out to the new people. It's going to the Lord, not to our new believer or our new guests. Stealing, as long as you give it to the Lord. Okay. we should know that all these kind of fit the same way. And I think this exaggerating your testimony to get people saved, this will be like making yourself, and this is even a kind of a tough thing to say, like making your story more outrageous in order to convince people. That's not what the Lord wants. He wants the truth. Okay, if you weren't someone that was on drugs or someone that overcome major obstacles and the Lord rescued you from that, maybe you were in church your whole life and you got saved at 6 and you've tried to live for the Lord since you were 6. That's a great testimony. That's a great story. Okay, that's the one that you should stick with. So exaggerating your testimony, and I kind of feel that sometimes I've been to these men's conferences where they have speakers come, and I'm not saying I'm cynical of them, but all of them have these like stories where they're like in movies and they come through, and I just pray that that's the case. But that's not something we need to be trying to do. Or swindling someone for that new church piano. As I was doing it, I almost put swindling someone for a new church lawnmower, and I thought, no, Preacher Walt may think I'm talking about him. So I wasn't intending that at all. This is just kind of some hypothetical situations that came across my mind. And then, of course, sinning with people in order to win them to Christ. And I think, the Lord wants us to meet people where they're at. I don't think He doesn't want us to participate in the sin. That's not the way. We need to live the way the Lord wants us to live. But just participating, because someone may see that and say, he's a churchgoer and he does the same thing I do. Why do I need church? So consider that sort of situation, and consider your life as far as, just like with Isaac, these people saw, at least the people in the Philistine, the land of the Philistines, they saw God in him. They saw God's work in his life. Is that something that they see in our lives? I think that's the kind of the thing I'm going to finish with on right there as we finish this up. So next week we're going to get into Isaac is I'm butchering these names. Jacob's on the run. I won't say he's necessarily on the run, but he left pretty quickly to get to where he needed to be, where his mother and father told him to go. And so now we're going to see the life of Jacob. And then thankfully we're going to see Esau and Jacob eventually come back together and reconcile a little bit. So anybody got any questions or any comments? We got a few minutes before we finish up. Nobody has anything. So what I want you to, didn't get 28. Here's something we're working toward as we go through this. We won't cover everyone, but as you see up here, you got a few people they highlight. Adam, Noah, we've talked about them. Abraham. You see when you go to Abraham, it comes over to the right. It says Isaac, Jacob, Judah, and it has all these different names. Eventually, they're all going to lead to Jesus Christ, and that's kind of what we're talking about with that promised seed, that seed of woman who was going to bruise the head of the serpent, as it mentioned in Genesis. That's Jesus Christ, and that's that promised seed that we're continuing to work through, and that the Lord is leading in all these people's lives. And so we're right there at Isaac and Jacob. I don't think we're going to get through all these people in our studies. Maybe sometime over 50 years, maybe we'll get through everybody. But that's always something to keep in your mind as you're studying the Old Testament, is there was a plan that God had from the beginning. And the plan was fulfilled. And the Scriptures were true, and Jesus Christ conquered what he was supposed to conquer, including death. So let's finish up with what's next week, lesson number 11 in our book. Lesson 11, as the book just kind of puts it into overdrive and slams the gas on to try to get through the last 15 chapters. Next week, I think it's 7 chapters you're supposed to read. But I kind of got through 27 a little bit. But we're in 28 through 33. And this talks about Jacob's ladder and his dream that he had and his journey back to the promised land. So we'll see what the Lord leads as far as that goes as we come through our lesson. So, all right. Mike, would you mind to close us in a word of prayer, please?
All the ministry this church in the last 9 people to the team. Wants to go this year and reflect in the faith and pray for Jesus.